I want to welcome to the podcast today, Mary Pinizzotto, right? That's how I say
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
you got it. Yep.
Yeah. So Mary is a teacher. She's a dance teacher. I'm going to have her introduce herself in a second, but I was trying to remember how we met. And I think we first met at Volunteer State
Yes.
in like the little restaurant bar.
Yep.
And I actually had noticed you when you were dancing with your students and stuff because I love your sense of style. And if this video ever makes it to YouTube, which is my goal, but she's always so colorful and she's got colored glasses and she received an award and she had these great red shoes peeking out from under her pants and I was like, I like her. And then we met in the restaurant bar, but you had heard my podcast or you were in my group or something.
Yeah, I had seen your group. Yeah. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I just saw your group, because I also uh have life coaching experience and I'm a hypnotist as well as a dance teacher. And so I was really interested in what you were doing. And I thought, this is just awesome. This woman is amazing. And then there you were. It was like, the stars aligned and we got to meet each other. And we saw each other in Kansas City as well. Yeah, because that's where I live, is in Kansas City. So I'll just say a couple things about my experience. I have been a dance teacher. I was trying to think of what year did I start. I mean, it's probably 35 years now, which is crazy. Amazing. Like I'm longer than I was old when I got in the dance business. And I got in kind of late, but I was recruited. Really weird. Fast story. I was waiting tables in a sports bar, and these guys used to come in for lunch at odd hours and they wore ties and suits and they always had cocktails at lunch. And I was like, what do you guys do? And they said, oh, we teach dance. You should come work for us. And I was like, I don't know how to dance. And they were like, don't worry, we'll teach you. And so I was obviously trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life at the time. So I went and worked for them, and they had a small, they weren't a chain studio, but they had 3 studios and they operated kind of like a chain studio, but sort of the salesy kind of chain at the time. And I quickly became like the studio manager. And then I saw people really like dancing and I was like, I want to do that. And that's when I met David Medeiros, he's Volunteer State. And I moved to Nashville and danced with him. And within, I don't know, 5 years, we were we won the Rising Star Smooth at Ohio. We were second in the Rising Star Rhythm. We were the 9 dance champions.
Wow.
So it happened really fast. And so over the years, I've taught at different places. I've always been an independent instructor, and I didn't get the training I got when I started in the dance business was mostly sales training, and it was good. And a lot of that is communication, but they were pretty, the business has changed a lot since then. So I've continued to educate myself because I'm really interested in human nature, like you, Amber, right? And you want to know, like, what makes people tick? How do we reach our potential? And so that's I'm in Kansas City now, and I'm an independent instructor, and I still have students, and I'm very proud of what my students last year, they accomplished a lot, and they call themselves the Amigos.
Oh, cute.
They're like their own little team. So I can't believe I'm still doing that at my age, but I'm so happy that I am. So
I don't know, that gives me a little bit of hope for myself. I mean, I don't necessarily have interest in teaching, but I love to dance. Like I love to dance. And I don't ever feel the inclination to quit. Like I never, like I get tired. I get a little like burned out at times or a little bit overwhelmed at times. But when I think about, should I move on to other things? It's always like, no, like this. So I'm like, I want to be dancing just like for 35 years. That sounds amazing. So,
yeah.
So the way that we arrived at this meeting was in Joyful Ballroom. I love Joyful Ballroom. If you don't know about it, it's my Facebook group, listeners. And of course it's free. It's just a Facebook group, but it's a little bit of community of amateur and pro-am dancers. There's some country dancers in there. There's a handful of salsa dancers in there. I have even a figure skater in there. So, but they bring questions, they bring things that I share things in there also, but they will share their concerns and things that they want help with. And one of the ladies in there who was a little bit more seasoned dancer was talking about some newer dancers who were struggling with communicating with their instructor. And they had some fears around that communication. And she said something like, oh, they don't want to hurt their feelings. They don't want, and these are like often older women with younger instructors. It's like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. And this could be like my grandson or my son. And so, I don't want to call them on the carpet, basically. And Mary chimed in and was like, this would be a great discussion to have. And I was like, yes, let's do it. So here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I was looking through what people brought up, to me, I saw kind of two patterns, and you can kind of speak to this too if you've seen this, but some of the complaints were about communicating around the teacher's behavior. So it was like, if they're tardy all the time, or they're distracted, or managing the time of the lesson, or last minute cancellations, not being super responsive. And like I hear this a lot too. It's like, I text him, I communicate, and he doesn't get right back to me. Like, like issues around that, communication differences, let's say it. And other little things like who they're paying attention to at a competition. I just talked to a client this week that was like, I was at the competition and I knew my teacher was just giving a lot more attention to the women who compete more, or who pay more, or who are doing more rounds. So that's one version of kind of the complaints. And then the other set was around their own development, like the pace that they're moving and the styles that they're dancing, and like when to move levels and things like that. So is that kind of what you've seen too?
Yeah. Yeah. Those are that you covered that pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, so much of it is expectation, right? And so it is all about communication. And I think today a good sort of one thing that we could really sort of tease apart would be, what is a reasonable expectation and what is maybe not so reasonable, just from the perspective of a professional, right? Like what they're able to provide, right? What are you actually, and the students are paying, and you are the customer.
Yeah. So thank you. I tell my clients all the time. I'm like, don't forget, you pay them. Like, this is a transaction. It's a business relationship. You're paying them for a service. And so we do have, an authority to that extent. Right.
It's interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
But they're the teacher. They're the expert we're hiring. So.
And okay, so the human need psychology, right? So Tony Robbins talks a lot about this, and that's one of my certifications. That doesn't matter, but there's 6 human needs, and dancing meets them all. I mean, in this paradigm, it's like you have the need to be, you have the need for certainty, you have the need for love and connection, you have a need for variety, you have a need for significance. We have a need for contribution, and I'm like, I do not come prepared with my 6 human needs, but it'll come to me, and the needs all get met through dancing, right? And the because there's a relationship there, you're moving, you're feeling like good, it just meets so many of our needs, and that becomes like we fall in love in dancing.
Yeah.
And then we love the dancing. We love how we feel dancing. And then that generally gets attributed to the person we're dancing with, especially the first teacher. So it's important to recognize, because it's a very emotional relationship.
Yeah. And I've talked to my students, or my clients rather, about this because it's funny. Because of what dance is, it does sort of trick our brain into thinking this is a different relationship than it is, because I don't have the same connection to my personal trainer, even though if I see him every week and we're working on my body and we're even working together, and he might even reference my body or touch a muscle and tell me but I don't feel the same attachment to him that I would the teacher. And so there's this funny thing about dance maybe it's its vulnerability, and maybe it's the emotion in there, and it brings up stuff in us that when I go to my personal trainer, it doesn't bring that up, and it's connected with this person. And so we do at times really need to set our perspective right and really understand what this relationship is, and understand that's normal. Like, it's normal if you feel connected. It's normal if there's an attachment. It's normal. You might even think it's a crush, even though it's not exactly. It's a whole, I wish non-dancers understood this, because it's this whole other category of a relationship that's not romantic, but it's not just a service provider. Like
my student calls it a drug. He's like, it's a drug. You're my drug. I'm like, okay, but it's not me even. And he knows that, because I, as a teacher, and especially I think it's different too. I'm a female teacher, and I for sure do not. I mean, I had to go through a lot of different, I'll just say like different sequences of layers of being. Sorry, I'm not being super articulate, but you know what I mean. Where like in the past, I didn't know how to handle that so well when I was younger. And, as I grew as a human being, I was like, oh, I can create better boundaries. And those boundaries are going to set my students up for more success and cause me a lot less problems. Right. So he says I'm the drug, but he actually says dancing is the drug. And he knows that. Right. Because it does all these hormones are going off when you dance. You're like releasing oxytocin and dopamine and all of them, right? They're all running through your system. So that
and if I had to have a conversation with like my quote unquote boyfriend, right, and I was worried about how he was going to respond, or I was worried he was going to hurt his feelings, there's a sense here of like, they might break up with me. I'll hear my clients say this, like when I kind of tease it out and I'm like, what is it we're mostly afraid of? It's like, I guess that he'll drop me or he'll reject me. And it mirrors so much a relationship. So I think that's why it can make it hard for us to want to communicate what we need to communicate, because we're worried about the fallout.
Yeah.
But I know you've described that you have a lot of experience with communication. So maybe you can help us figure out, and I like what you said, let's bring it back around to what are reasonable expectations and what are not. So let's let's focus on like the teacher behaviors at first.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's really good. Because ultimately this is such a growth opportunity, right? So I mean, some of the teacher behaviors that I saw listed right on the Facebook group, and I've seen it happen, they're just unacceptable, right? Like you're not at the doctor's office. No one is having an emergency. Your your teacher should be on time for your lesson. They should not be interrupted during your lesson. You're paying a premium. It's not inexpensive to take dance lessons. And I mean, we're well compensated. We are professionals, and our job is to give you our focused attention, just like you do on a coaching session, right, Amber? You're there 100%. I turn off all do not disturb on my phone, right? I'm not answering my phone. I am not looking at texts. I mean, I am 100% with my student in the time. That's important. How to deal with that is, it's really, if you have trouble holding that boundary for yourself, then that's really a personal growth issue.
Okay.
Right. You may not want to have to deal with the backlash from the other person. I totally understand that. So a way of communicating it is to simply say, I can't speak to everybody because I don't know everyone's situation, but, maybe to be able to say, this is my hard-earned money, and I really appreciate you. And, we do have a personal relationship, but from a agreement standpoint, can we make the agreement that when we make an appointment, we honor that we start on time and that we end on time? And if ending on time is 10, 5, or, everybody has different policies around, like an hour is 50 minutes, and that's fine, whatever your policy, but be really clear about that and ask about it. So if you're already in the situation, maybe to cue up the conversation and say, I kind of want to go over something with you, because, just curious. Those are good ways to start conversations. I'm just curious. What do you consider a full hour? Right? Because in my book, it's 60 minutes. Oh, well, at the studio, an hour is 50 minutes. That's very common. Okay. If you have like my students don't have a written agreement with me.
Yeah.
But some places they do. So, but also, okay, it's one of the things that I really value is being on time. It makes me feel like I am that I'm important. It
Mhm.
makes me feel like I'm getting what I signed up for. Phrases like that, where it's like, this is what is important to me. And it's an expectation because we do have a professional relationship,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Um, what do you think about, I totally agree. And my teacher is 15 minutes late just about every single time. But
Does he listen to your podcast?
I don't think he does. So I talk about whatever I want. Um, but I learned very early on, because very early on, it kind of was an issue for me because I'm very prompt. I'm very like on time. I'm usually early to things. And so, and I've had a lot of clients discuss, especially tardiness, and they make it mean disrespect, and they make it mean like you're not honoring my time, which, okay. And I wrestled with it for a little while. Um, but I also came to the conclusion, and we've talked about this a little bit, is I really like him as a teacher. I really value him. Um, and in my area, there is no one better. Like, I'm in Oregon. This is not like Ballroom Mecca, you know.
Right.
There
Yeah.
are some other studios, but I also feel like he is very skilled and we work very well together. So there's some times where I can advocate for myself, and I have in certain ways on time. But I also just know that I've decided personally, this is not the battle I'm going to fight. So
Yeah.
I just know he's always going to be 10 minutes late, probably. And I have that buffer in my schedule, and I'm okay with that buffer. I don't feel like I'm betraying myself with that buffer. Um, there are times like if he wants to totally change the time and it doesn't work with my schedule, then I say, oh, I can't. I've already planned my day. This is the time I have. If we can't do it, we can do it another day. And I kind of have to protect my time and my sanity.
Yeah.
But we did talk a little bit, and you can speak to this. Like, what if we don't have a lot of options and our teacher isn't willing or able to come our way?
Yeah. I mean, and there's that. I mean, in every relationship, there's the kind of like, well, there's all these good things, and then they have, I
Yeah.
mean, I wish everybody was perfect like you and I, but
Yeah.
they're not.
Yes. Darn it. Just be
Yeah.
like me. Be like Mary. It's easy.
Perfect. Which is, I'm just kidding.
I know.
But so there's trade-offs, right? But my question is like, when he's late, does he make up the time with
He
you?
does. Yep.
Okay, so you get your full value. So in this case, you're like, I know that's part of his. There are people who are just late.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you learn this about your instructor, and you have a great instructor, right? And they in so many other ways they're just great. Well, adjust. We have to make those adjustments. Um, I think there's like criteria where you got to ask yourself, like, if they're late and they don't make up the time and they don't respect you, like, and then I loved what you said, because it's like, what do I make that mean?
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't mean anything about you.
Mm-hmm.
And when your instructor is paying attention to other people, it doesn't mean anything about you. I can get that it can be irritating because you
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
their attention, but nothing anybody else does ever means anything about you. That's super
Mm-hmm.
hard for us as humans. And in the ballroom world, where we're
Yeah.
like putting ourselves out to be judged,
Mm-hmm.
we're giving literally our, hi, here, you tell me how I am, right?
Yeah.
It's just like the least healthy thing you can do as a human
It's
being.
so true. Yeah, it's so true. We're a little crazy, but we love it.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's reasons for it,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
totally benefits. So I don't know if I answered your question, but like,
Yeah.
if you got to make trade-offs in
Yeah.
life, but you just having reasonable expectations. So
Mm-hmm.
if a person, he's not able to meet your expectation, so then you get to decide, okay, am I going to make a thing out of it and torture myself, or am I
Yeah.
going to just make, like you just make that adjustment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And we're focusing a little bit. I mean, we're using kind of the lateness example.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things in teacher behavior that can be actually really concerning. And
Yes.
I've had some clients where it reaches a level of codependency that's not healthy. And there's like behaviors on the teacher's side that are pretty negative, reinforcing, or condescending. And one of my clients I was talking to yesterday, I kind of came to this conclusion with them as I said, is this situation conducive to your well-being?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's not conducive to your well-being, then we really need to step back and consider if we're going to stay with this. So there's light things, and there's things that don't matter, and there's things that we can kind of compromise on. But then at other times too, there's behaviors that are just not okay that I've definitely seen in conversations that I've had with clients. So I want to make sure we say that too.
Oh no, there 100%.
Yeah.
There definitely are. And this is where I think on a really deeper level, this is where you really have to ask yourself, is this a pattern in my life? Do I allow people to step on my boundaries in other areas? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know. I really think we get what we attract. And in that sense of, yes, you might be in a place where there's only one teacher and that, but in general, like relationships reflect our beliefs about ourselves. Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And a dance relationship is no different. And so what a great, opportunity, and such a good thing you're doing, Amber, for the community to be able to really step back and go, okay, I'm seeing this here. Now, is this, this is probably a pattern from somewhere else that when I shift internally, the stuff on the outside starts to shift too. So that's like a deeper conversation.
Right.
But generally, it is not okay for your teacher to abuse you.
Yeah.
And what abuse looks like is, it's being very negative about you. It's disrespecting your boundaries. It's being abusive in the teaching, right? Like if your teacher is constantly telling you to do that, you're doing it wrong, or that's not good enough in whatever the words are, that often means they don't know how to teach you. They don't know how to communicate to you what you need to know. In my view, as an instructor, is like, sure, I have some students that are more talented than others, right?
Yeah.
But it's my job, and that's my joy, is to figure out, how do I say this in a way that this person is going to get an aha? How am I gonna help them have a breakthrough here? Right. And then to also know, like, well, I can only expect them to progress this quickly, right? Like I can see that this person has, because some people have physical capabilities, and then some people have very distinct mind body splits.
Yeah.
Where
Separation. Yeah.
they can't quite get what's in their head to go into their body. And that's a completely different kind of teaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That you have to work with. So that's also, I'm an experienced teacher. So you can't expect somebody. There are some really young, very talented teachers who are good, right? Like they just get it. They know how to teach. But usually the younger you are, the less life experience you have, the less, empathy or compassion you're going to have for people who are of all spectrums, just because you don't have life experience.
Yeah. 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 This might be a good segue into like the other area that was a concern, which was wanting to be in charge of their own development.
Yes,
So like, I want to decide what I'm dancing, and I want to decide the pace at which we move, and I think I'm ready for open, and I don't want to learn Argentine tango. Like, so let's speak to that a little bit. What about we've delegated to them. I'm hiring you to be the expert. Now, do I let you be the expert?
Yeah. Well, yes, and it's a great improv game, right? Yes, you let them be the expert, but if there's a dance you really don't want to do, you've got to ask, what's the reason they want you to learn that dance? Is it because they only know certain dances? And that's okay too. And if that's all you got available, that's fine. But if you're like hell bent on, I just want to learn these two dances, you have to have that conversation where you you come to some happy medium, right? I have students that want to learn them all. I have students that only want to learn a couple. I'm okay with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I have students that want to learn dances that I just don't know. I don't do a lot of those dance. You know, I'm not a Lindy Hop person, right? So then
Yeah.
I'll refer them to someone else. But as far as deciding when to move up, there's a lot of factors in that. Okay. It depends on, like, does your instructor have people in different categories? And maybe there's a problem there, and that they should be honest with you about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good
And
point.
then there are times when a student thinks that they're more advanced than they are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's tricky because most people come to this style of dancing as adults,
Yeah.
right? And they don't want, you're not 4 years old where you can spend a whole year working on your footwork and then the next year working on, the layers.
Yeah.
You have to be able to move up. But at the same time, if you move up too soon, you're going to lose a lot of foundation a lot of times, right?
Mhm.
So there is a balance there where you can express that desire, and then maybe you need to get, if your teacher's like, just no, you're just definitely not ready, or do they have a good reason why? And can it's all in the conversations that you're able to have. And
Yeah.
I'll just say one more thing about that. If you
Yeah.
can't have that conversation, you really need to look at the relationship. You really need to decide, is this good for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kind of another question I have is, let's say I've advocated for myself, or I've communicated with my teacher, and um I've asked him to do some things and come my way, and let's say he kind of doesn't, and I'm at the point where I think I want to change teachers. I've
Okay.
talked to different teachers about this, and I get different opinions. So
Yeah.
I'm curious about your take on this, but because the conversation, first of all, the conversation around, like, it's a breakup, right? It's like, is how it feels. So there's a conversation
Yes.
around, like, I'm gonna discontinue with you, I'm gonna move on or whatever. Um, but then there's also, for the dancer, for the student, like, how okay is that? Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes we feel like it's a betrayal, like we're going to hurt their feelings. And so I'd love for your
Yeah.
opinion on this as a teacher.
Okay. I always tell my students they are welcome to take lessons with whoever they want to, whenever they want to. Okay. They do not belong to me.
Thank you.
Now, if another instructor comes and tries to,
Like,
court
poach.
them, poach them, whatever, which doesn't happen really, but in my world, but no, I'm not okay with that. I'm
Yeah.
okay if the other instructor talks to me about it. I mean, I'm fine with, like, I am a little bit more like, I don't know. I'm a pretty open-minded person. Like, and I also know, like, I can't meet everybody's needs all the time, you
Yeah.
know? So, and I also think that by having that attitude, my students don't want to go anywhere else. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, it's a funny, like,
Yes.
dynamic, right? I don't own you. You're your own person. You should,
Mhm.
right? And so there's that. But so if your teacher is like, kind of keeps a tight fist on you in that way and makes you feel guilty, I mean, you feel guilty. Nobody else can make you feel anything, but they can
Mhm.
dig in there and give you the guilt trips. I don't think that's right. I do not think that's right. This is our profession.
Mhm.
I'm here to serve my students, and every teacher should be here to serve the student. The student is not here to serve the teacher.
Yeah.
We admire our teachers, as we should, right? And I mean, my students are very generous with me, and I appreciate that, right? But I would never take advantage of it. And I have seen teachers do all kinds of crazy stuff that
Yeah.
I think is totally unethical.
Mhm.
You should be free to explore dancing with another instructor anytime you want to.
Mm.
Yes, if my student suddenly one day came in dancing with another teacher, I would feel, and didn't talk to me about it, my feelings would be hurt.
Yeah.
But you know what? I it's his money, it's his dancing, it's his life,
Mhm.
right? I,
Yeah.
that you're like, I have many students. You have one teacher,
Yeah.
right? And we don't own you. Our job is to serve you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a flip side to that because I have seen students that are like, they think they own their teacher, and the
Mm.
students do not own the teacher either, right? You're paying, it's an exchange.
Yeah.
And that line, it's such a weird business in that way because that line easily gets confused. And
Yeah.
there aren't, like we talked about it before we started recording, there's no ethical, there's no committee, or I'm not for any committees. I'm
Yeah.
like not
Yeah.
for that kind of stuff, but there isn't any like guidebook that says, I mean, maybe inside of Arthur Maria Fristier, they might have one. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like in the independent world, we're just independent.
Yeah.
Anybody can say, hey, I'm a dance teacher. And
Mm-hmm.
that's it. So you kind of
Yeah.
want to like look at that. And
Mm-hmm.
not everybody is emotionally mature
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
on both on students and teachers. And
Yeah.
that's where we have, and we don't get that kind of education as children, most of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where, you know, your the work you're doing and some of the work that I do can really help people because we understand that relationship, and we can help people to tease apart, like, is this my stuff? Like, am I kind of, is it me? Is it them? What's
Mm-hmm.
happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good to have that. I mean, this group is a great place to discuss this. So
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree. I mean, I've definitely had clients where like their teacher is more possessive than others, and they're very offended when it's even brought up like that I'm going to go to another studio or I'm going to visit with another teacher. Sometimes the teacher wants to be like the primary person and they'll make those arrangements. And I think some of that's okay. I mean, I'm always checking myself and even with my clients, making sure like, let's just always understand this is like a business relationship. It's a transactional relationship. We're paying for a service. And just like you've described, like they don't own you. They don't even own your development or get to decide who you dance with. This is all optional. It's all for fun. Like, it's dancing. It's just dancing. It's our hobby in our case as adults. Um, and from a teacher's perspective, I think if it was me, I would be like, I want to create the most beautiful and skilled environment that they wouldn't want to go anywhere else.
yes,
And so
exactly.
let me just create a thing where they don't feel the need to go. But also, I as a teacher would believe for my students the best thing for them is a team. Like there's going to be a point where I can't teach them everything, or
Mm-hmm.
um they're going to
Yeah,
need things that I can't provide. Like my teacher, I love him. He's great and we have a great partnership. He's a dude. And I need more women in my team that can help me from a female perspective.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I totally agree with you. And I think the healthiest thing is to be a kind of a free agent. But yes, but I am choosing when I choose my expert, provided it's a healthy enough relationship, I do defer to them. I
Yeah,
do let them be the expert and listen to their advice and follow it. And I think that's really served me well. But I also always keep in the back of my mind, like, but I get to decide, where I go and who I dance with and who's
yes.
teaching me.
Yeah. I mean, as you're talking, I'm thinking like, why, it's such a great question. It's like, why do you dance? Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you ask yourself, why do I dance? And what is it I want to get out of my dancing? Like, what do I want to experience through my dancing? Right. And then write that down and have it somewhere where you can refer back to it so that when you have these things come up, you can go, well, is this still, has this become something different than
Yeah.
that? Right. Is it now becoming like about the relationship, and I've lost why I'm dancing?
Mm-hmm.
Because no one should let go of that. Dance is such, I mean, and the thing is, even in a bad dance relationship, you're still going to get a lot of it. That's
Yeah,
why, that's why it is the drug. It's the ultimate
it
drug.
is. It's so
Oh God.
funny.
Even for
Um,
me, I mean, I love dancing.
yeah. Yeah, me too. Okay. So Mary, besides dancing, you mentioned you're hypnotist.
Yes, I'm
I'm
a
so
hypnotist.
fascinated by this because especially lately, so maybe the last year or so, this is why I also love that we met when we did, because I had been toying with the idea of exploring hypnotism and just the subconscious mind, and I'm super interested in it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and especially lately, there's a couple of clients that I've had where I've thought, oh, I wonder if hypnotism would be a tool that would really help them. So I'm kind
Mm-hmm.
of curious, maybe just in our last couple minutes, if you could
Yeah.
like, well, or maybe tell us what you do with your hypnotism, if it applies to dance or in the ways that it could, or if it could help people. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you experienced some of it.
Yeah. Yeah. We did a session. Yeah. We didn't talk about dancing, but
No, we didn't, but you kind of got, I'm still curious to talk to you about that.
yeah.
Well, okay, so our subconscious mind is what operates. I mean, like when you think of going to open a door, you do not have to think about how you're going to get up out of that chair and go turn that door handle. You're just, your body, your brain is, your conscious mind is doing something completely different, right?
Yeah.
And so in dance, like most people have probably heard this, but if you haven't, that you have four levels of consciousness in the sense of you're unconsciously incompetent. You don't know what you don't know. Then you
Mm-hmm.
become consciously incompetent, which is really a that's the worst part where you're like,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
my God,
I'm
this is so much
terrible.
I don't
Like, I don't know
know.
anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I mean, we go through all these things every time we learn anything. And then we become consciously competent where you can do it, but you still have to think about it. And then the ultimate is to become unconsciously competent,
Yeah.
right? So that's really what we're doing. And so our unconscious is beating your heart, it's making you breathe. I mean, it's doing so many things. And they say that we can hold in our conscious mind 5 to 7 bits of information.
Mm-hmm.
When in your environment, your unconscious is taking in billions of bits of information all the time. So our brain is mostly, the reticular activating system is mostly deleting information based on what it thinks is important to us. So hypnosis helps us to shift, like help the unconscious go, oh, she really wants this. We thought it was that because we have programming from being alive. And because we are learning all the time, we become unconsciously competent at stuff sometimes that we don't really want to be unconsciously competent at, right? So we have to reprogram that. So that's kind of the simplest way I think of saying, hypnosis is helpful. And I did a workshop and I have a recording of it, which
Oh,
I'd be
yes.
happy to share with your audience.
Yeah. I'll link it in the show notes. I'll put it in
Yeah,
Joyful Ballroom, all
I'll
that.
send you a link. Yeah, just and it's really learning a little bit more about hypnosis and um, how to use self hypnosis
Mm.
to improve your game. And I've had, quite a few of the people that took that workshop, like they were very happy with the
Yeah.
results
Yeah.
when they practiced because it's pretty simple and we're hypnotized so much. So we're just deciding like how we're going to influence ourselves. We're just taking a little bit more control of that. So
I like that, which is so different than what I think people imagine, which is like being on a stage and somebody putting you in a trance, and like it's
yeah.
not that.
No, but I mean that is, that stuff does happen too, and it's happening on your lessons all the time.
Mm.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so funny because, it's just when you watch TV, when you drive down the road and you're not thinking at all, those are all different states of hypnosis,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
So, yeah.
This would be a fun conversation for a separate podcast. So
Yeah,
we
we'll
should
do
do
it.
that. Yeah.
That would be great.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and your perspective as a teacher. I love it so much that we could get a teacher on here and have you speak to your side of it. I think that's gonna I know that's gonna really help a lot of students with their
That's great. It was my pleasure. Absolutely. And what you're doing is awesome, Amber. So just keep
Thank you.
going. And it's
Thank you
awesome.
so
Thank
much.
you.
I do really, really love it. Like, as any business goes, it kind of ebbs and flows. And sometimes I'm busier than other times. But man, when I'm doing my thing with my clients or I'm meeting people at competitions and they tell me the podcast has influenced them, like it just lights me up and it fulfills me so much. So I really appreciate everybody that listens and all the clients that have put their trust in me. I just love it. It's awesome. So, all right. Well, thanks, Mary.
Thanks, Amber.
Bye.